September
to a successful partnership,
1956. Las
and to many
Vegas,
more.
a city built on glamour, money, and secrets. But behind the neon lights, something was very wrong, and one night, one man decided he'd had enough. Frank Sinatra was having dinner in the Garden Room restaurant at the Sands Hotel when he noticed something strange. Every night, Nat King Cole performed to sold-out crowds at the Sands. The most famous voice in America, earning $4,500 a week. But Nat never ate in the restaurant, never sat in the dining room, always took his meals backstage, in his dressing room, alone. Frank asked his valet, a black man named George, "Why doesn't Nat ever eat here?" George's answer, for words, made Frank's blood run cold. Colored people aren't allowed. What Frank did in the next 24 hours didn't just end segregation at the Sands. It changed Las Vegas forever. Stay with us, because this story will change the way you see courage. This is Story Sphere, and this is that story. Nat King Cole was born Nathaniel Adams Coles in Montgomery, Alabama, in 1919. By 1956, he was one of the biggest stars in the world. Unforgettable, Mona Lisa, the Christmas song. His voice was velvet. His piano playing was genius. He sold millions of records, had his own television show, and was beloved by audiences everywhere. But in 1956 America, none of that mattered when you were black. Las Vegas in the 1950s was a strange place. Black entertainers could perform, could fill showrooms with white audiences paying premium prices, could make the casinos millions, but they couldn't stay in the hotels where they performed. Couldn't eat in the restaurants. Couldn't swim in the pools. Couldn't even walk through the front door. They called it the Mississippi of the West. Nat King Cole performed regularly at the Sands Hotel. Headliner. His name and lights on the marquee. Sold out every show. But when his performance ended, Nat had to leave through the kitchen. Had to stay at a boarding house on the Westside, the segregated neighborhood where black people were allowed to live. His white manager got a room at the Sands. Nat, the star, got nothing. The Sands allowed Nat to use his dressing room and the area behind the kitchen where the mostly black staff took breaks. That was it. The casino floor, forbidden. The pool, forbidden. Nat never complained publicly. Couldn't afford to. Complaining meant losing work. And losing work meant his family didn't eat. So he smiled, performed, took his money, and ate dinner alone in his dressing room every single night. Frank Sinatra was also performing at the Sands in September 1956. He headlined, owned a piece of the casino, had power. Real power, not just celebrity power. Frank and Nat were friends, had recorded together, respected each other's artistry. But Frank didn't know about the segregation Nat faced at the Sands. Didn't know because Nat never told him. And Frank, consumed with his own career, his own shows, his own life, hadn't noticed. Until one night, Frank was having dinner in the Garden Room, the main restaurant at the Sands. Beautiful, elegant, the place where high rollers and celebrities dined. Frank noticed he'd never seen Nat there. Not once. Nat performed at the Sands dozens of times a year, but never ate in the restaurant. After dinner, Frank called for his valet, George Jacobs, a black man who'd worked for Frank for years. Someone Frank trusted completely. "George, can I ask you something?" "Of course, boss." "Nat King Cole. He performs here all the time, but I've never seen him eat in the Garden Room. Why is that?" George went quiet. "Mr. Sinatra, I don't think." "George, why doesn't Nat eat in the restaurant?" George met Frank's eyes. "Because colored people aren't allowed in the dining room at the Sands." Frank stared at him. "What?" "Black performers can perform, but they can't eat in the restaurant. Can't stay in the hotel. Can't use the casino. That's the rule." Frank's face went red. "That's the rule?" "Nat King Cole fills this goddamn showroom every night. Makes this casino a fortune. And they won't let him eat in the restaurant." "Yes, sir." "Where does he eat?" "In his dressing room. Alone. They bring him food from the kitchen." Frank stood up. "Who enforces this rule?" Now here's where it gets interesting, and what Frank did next is something nobody in Vegas expected. The restaurant manager, Mr. Davidson, and the hotel management. "Find Davidson now. Bring him to my suite." 30 minutes later, the restaurant manager, James Davidson, stood nervously in Frank's suite. Davidson was a middle-aged man who'd worked in Vegas for 20 years. He knew how things worked, knew the unwritten rules. "Mr. Sinatra, you wanted to see me?" "Yeah, I want to understand something." "Nat King Cole, why isn't he allowed in the garden room?" Davidson shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Sinatra, it's hotel policy. We don't allow Negroes in the dining room. It's not personal. It's just policy." "You keep saying policy. Whose policy?" "The hotels, the casinos. It's always been this way." Frank's voice went quiet. "Dangerous. So Nat King Cole can stand on that stage and make you rich, but he can't sit in a chair and eat a steak." "Mr. Sinatra, I don't make the rules, but you enforce them. Every night you see Nat come in. You see him go to his dressing room. You see food brought to him like he's a prisoner, and you think that's acceptable." "It's not about what I think. It's about—" "Here's what I think," Frank interrupted. "I think that policy ends tonight. Right now. You understand me?" Davidson paled. "Mr. Sinatra, I can't just—" "Yes, you can. Because here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow night, I'm inviting Nat King Cole to dinner in the garden room. He's going to sit at my table. He's going to order whatever he wants. And you're going to treat him like the artist he is, like the human being he is. But the other guests will deal with it. And if they don't, if anyone says one word, if any waiter refuses to serve him, if any manager tries to stop him, you're all fired. Every single one of you. I'll make sure you never work in this town again." Davidson's mouth opened and closed. "Mr. Sinatra, I don't have the authority." "Then get someone who does. I want the hotel manager here. Now." Within an hour, the hotel manager arrived. Frank repeated everything. Same ultimatum, same threat. The manager tried to argue, tried to explain that other hotels would be upset, that it would cause problems, that the casino owners wouldn't like it. Frank didn't care. "I own 9% of this casino. I bring in more money than anyone. And I'm telling you, Nat King Cole eats in that restaurant tomorrow. Or I walk. And I take every headliner I know with me. You'll be an empty casino by the weekend." The manager knew Frank wasn't bluffing. "Mr. Sinatra, if we do this, when we do this, it changes everything." "Good. It should change. This is 1956. We just fought a war for freedom. And you're telling me the man with the most beautiful voice in America can't eat in a restaurant? That's not policy. That's racism. And I won't be part of it." The next evening, Frank called Nat. "Hey, Nat, you doing anything for dinner tomorrow?" Nat, cautious, said, "Not particularly." "Why?" "I want to take you to dinner. The garden room at the Sands. 8 o'clock. You available?" Silence on the other end. Then quietly, "Frank, you know I can't eat there. You can tomorrow. Trust me." "Frank, what did you do?" "Nothing yet. But tomorrow you're eating in that restaurant. As my guest. Will you come?" Nat's voice was thick with emotion. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." "Frank, if this goes wrong." "It won't. Be there at 8. We're something nice. September 18th, 1956. 8 o'clock. Nat King Cole walked through the front entrance of the Sands Hotel for the first time in his career. Not through the kitchen. The front door. He walked across the casino floor, past the slot machines, past the card tables. People stared, whispered. A black man walking through the casino like he belonged there. Nat reached the garden room. The maitre d', who'd been briefed by Frank, greeted him professionally. "Mr. Cole, Mr. Sinatra is expecting you." Frank stood up from his table. Front and center. The best table in the restaurant. He shook Nat's hand. "Glad you could make it." Nat sat down, looked around. Every person in the restaurant was watching. Some with curiosity, some with hostility, some with disbelief. Frank raised his voice slightly, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Nat, what are you drinking? Order whatever you want. Tonight you're my guest. And anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me." Nobody said a word. They had dinner. Frank ordered steak. Nat ordered chicken. They talked about music, about their families, about everything except what was happening around them. Waiters served them professionally because Frank had made it clear anyone who didn't would be fired on the spot. After dinner, Frank and Nat walked out together. Through the restaurant, through the casino, out the front door. When they were outside, Nat stopped. "Frank, do you understand what you just did?" "I know exactly what I did. You broke the color line at the sands." "Good. It needed breaking." Nat's eyes were wet. "Nobody's ever done something like this for me. Nobody." Frank put his hand on Nat's shoulder. "You're my friend. You're a brilliant artist. And you deserve to be treated with dignity. That's not radical. That's basic human decency." The next day, the story spread through Las Vegas. Frank Sinatra had integrated the Sands Hotel, had brought Nat King Cole into the garden room, had threatened to shut down anyone who objected. Other hotels noticed. If the Sands was allowing black performers to dine, to stay, to exist as equals, they'd have to follow, or they'd lose their headliners. Within 6 months, most major Vegas hotels had quietly changed their policies. Not out of moral conviction, out of economic necessity. Frank Sinatra had made segregation bad for business. Nat King Cole never forgot. For the rest of his life, whenever someone asked him about Frank, he'd tell this story. In 1965, Nat was dying of lung cancer. Frank visited him in the hospital. They talked for hours. "You know what I'll always remember?" Nat said, "That night at the Sands, when you made them see me as a person. You were always a person, Nat. Some people just needed reminding." Nat King Cole died on February 15th, 1965. He was 45 years old. At his funeral, Frank spoke. Nat was a genius. But more than that, he was dignified. He faced indignities that would have broken most people, and he never let it make him bitter. Never let it steal his grace. That's courage. Real courage. In 1998, when Frank died, Nat's daughter, Natalie Cole, spoke about her father's friendship with Frank. "My father faced racism every day of his career. Restaurants that wouldn't serve him. But Frank Sinatra said, no more. Not because it was easy, because it was right. And because he believed my father deserved dignity." That single dinner at the Sands changed Las Vegas, changed how black performers were treated, changed history. There is a plaque at the site of the old Sands Hotel. It reads, "On this site, September 18th, 1956, Frank Sinatra and Nat King Cole broke the color barrier in Las Vegas dining. Their friendship and courage helped end segregation in the city's hotels and casinos." Frank Sinatra learned that Nat King Cole was forbidden from using the restaurant he filled every night. What happened next shocked Vegas. Not because it was complicated, because it was simple. Frank said, "This ends now." And because he had power, it did. That's the difference between having power and using it. Frank could have looked away, could have said, "Not my problem." But he didn't, because he understood that silence is complicity, and that sometimes the most important thing you can do is invite someone to dinner. This has been Story Sphere. If this story moved you, share it, because some stories deserve to be remembered.